currently we're in collaboration with CDC on continuing forecasts on, COVID and monkeypox. And these are all coming in from being able to help gather expert opinions to the point that someone can take this and turn this into action.
Welcome to For Humanity, an AI Risk podcast, episode number 50, Accurately Predicting Doom. I'm John Sherman, your host. Thank you so much for joining me. For Humanity is the AI Risk podcast for the general public. No tech background required. This show is solely about the threat of human extinction from artificial intelligence. Please hit like, share, subscribe, donate, and leave a comment. That is how we build community here. Got a special project I want to start out with here today. So in 2025, the battle to regulate AI in California will be critical to slowing the suicidal race condition the frontier AI labs are in, risking all of our lives on a daily basis. So we have a group of volunteers meeting on Thursday nights to promote For Humanity, and one of the volunteers is a really motivated, really smart high school senior living in the San Francisco Bay Area. He reached out to me this week because he wants to start a super PAC made up of high school students to support meaningful AI risk regulation in California. I think this is a fantastic idea. It broadens the issue of AI risk, bringing it to new people in new places, from the people who have the most to lose, young people. So who wants to help? Who out there wants to help? I'm looking for one viewer or listener or several to step up and say, hell yeah, I'd like to help those kids in California. I'd like a single volunteer to give $1,000 to cover the costs of the legal and branding work they'll need to start their super PAC. High school students organizing to demand we reduce AI risk is a story news organizations would love to run. This is the kind of general public breakthrough this show is all about. So who's got $1,000 to help out these high school students? Email me at forhumanitypodcast@gmail.com. I will be absolutely thrilled to set you up directly with them. Okay, so we had our first For Humanity community live meeting last Thursday night. It was really cool. I'm sorry you missed it if you did. We had people from several continents meeting on a Zoom link talking about AI risk and working to make the burden we all carry of risk realism just a little bit lighter. We'll be back at it again this Thursday night, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Please drop in. I would love to see you there. In the news this week, a lot of important people in AI won Nobel Prizes. Here are the new Nobel laureates discussing how their work could kill us all.
There are very few examples of more intelligent things being controlled by less intelligent things, which makes you wonder whether when AI gets smarter than us, it's going to take over control.
As a physicist, I'm very unnerved by something which has no control, something which I don't understand well enough so that I can understand what are the limits to which one could drive that technology. That's the question which AI is pushing, and is pushing very much because of the neural network things which have come forth from physics and computer science and now seem absolute marvels.
It's going to be this hugely transformative technology, but as with any new powerful technology, and perhaps AI will be the most powerful, that comes with risks, attendant risks as well, and unknowns. And some of those are to do with controllability, understanding these systems, interpreting what they do, and how to manage what are the values we want these systems to have, what do we want to use them for, how do we want to deploy them. We need to start discussing and researching those things now.
Nobody knows when, but most of the good researchers I know think it will happen. My guess is it will probably happen sometime between 5 and 20 years from now. It might be longer. There's a very small chance it'll be sooner. And we don't know what's going to happen then.
I worry about anything which says, I'm big, I'm fast, I'm faster than you are, I'm bigger than you are, and I can also run you. Now, can you peacefully inhabit with me? I don't know.
So there are Nobel laureates now who believe that their work is going to kill us all. Maybe that will count for something. Certainly as we talk about Jeffrey Hinton saying he is now a Nobel laureate can't hurt, right? So one of the really frustrating things about the unknown AI future is that all of the experts who understand AI risk and think it's a real thing and a big deal, all of them have very different visions of what they think exactly is going to happen in the future. Predicting the future with AI's unknown impact seems very, very hard to do, even for the experts. But not everyone totally agrees with this. There are prediction markets where forecasters go to make bets on thousands of different things, and AI risk and AI safety are big among them on Metaculus, the most famous forecasting market. On Metaculus, a lot of really smart people with track records that are impressive of accurately predicting things point their brains at the big AI questions, and it is fascinating to see the things that they think are most likely to happen and when. Deger Turan is the CEO of Metaculus. He's a really interesting guy, has a great energy, and I learned a whole lot from this conversation.
I'm good.
Great to see you. Great to meet you. Good. So when I first started learning all about AI safety and AI risk, there was this thing that came up, Metaculus, prediction market, this place where it seems like a lot of smart people spend a lot of time predicting things and then somehow betting on their predictions and stuff. So just take it from the top. Tell me how the whole thing Metaculus works, and I'll caution you going in. This show is for the general public, so a lot of AI safety people know a lot about this. Imagine that your audience knows nothing about it.
Sure, sounds good. So what Metaculus is an online forecasting platform. The goal has been, how can we improve human reasoning and decision making on global issues? And to no surprise, a lot of people who are interested in forecasting that would be good for, the collective good of humanity have focused on AI. And I do think it is one of the primary topics of interest for Metaculus. Probably the most crowded category of forecasting on our platform is on forecasting impact of AI development, both in AGI, transformative AI level, and also on a much shorter timeline basis too. The foundation of Metaculus wasn't only focused on AI necessarily. A lot of other categories of risks that threaten humanity at scale, all the way from nuclear risks to climate risks. So a lot of work we have done has covered this entire space. What we do is we aggregate forecasts. All of our users generate forecasts by estimating different probabilities, dates, or numeric values for future events at hand. They're a mix of models that they are using and human judgment. And what we do is we aggregate all of these forecasts into, we've had about 2 million predictions to date, which to me is really exciting. Using this, we generate a community prediction. And the community prediction is interestingly quite hard to beat. Most of the top forecasters at hand, if they were to just copy the community prediction, they would score on top of the leaderboard. The way we do it is not necessarily you're putting money to bet, but you basically have your currency of reputation, which is linked to how accurate you have been. And it's a different incentive landscape to participate in Metaculus, where you're not making money here, but the more accurate you are, the more strength you have to the next claim that you are making. We have had thousands of forecasters focusing on geopolitical and other events, AI in 2023. Out of it's around like 3,000 forecasters that have focused in 2023, only 3 people were able to out-predict the Metaculus aggregate. Now, there is something really interesting happening there, where when we aggregate so many people, the wisdom of the crowd somehow ends up being much more accurate. The mission we have is, how can we use this for betterment of humanity? How can we use this to reduce different risks that are escalating? Be it AI or climate.
Is the basic idea, like when you look at AI risk or AI safety, there's divergent opinions on all sides, right? You have experts saying all different things, even the people who are AI risk realists. Take the leading ones. They all, are divergent in their opinions. And so this is a way to sort of take a lot of smart people's expert opinions, corral them in a way that you can understand it, the data and what it says the prediction is going to be, and then record that over time and decide who is making these predictions is better at doing that. And over time, you build a reputation. You become sort of like a super predictor.
Right. I would put it this way. For questions like, when will transformative AI arrive? There are so many subparts to these questions. You require a lot more granular breaking down. It's not like, when will AGI arrive? Or what does AGI even mean? What we have at Metaculus is a lot of people who are passionate about the topic, who are domain experts in these questions, that actually come up with very specific fine-grained resolution criteria. And on top of this, what we do is figure out what are interesting short-term proxies. Like, instead of trying to forecast job loss in, say, like 2040, can we see patterns of this that are mirroring in a much shorter time scale by 2030, by even next year? Like, will job loss in Philippines and Pakistan on call centers, is that a good enough short-term proxy for understanding how thought work in the long run will have an impact?
Yeah.
So what we do is break down these very large, very nebulous questions that has, exactly how you said, many different perspectives, people pulling in all different directions to say, okay, let's go look at something very specific and something with a very clear resolution criteria, meaning we will be able to figure out, is this correct or not? Was this plan out?
Right. And so, like, that example you just get, I was going to say real quick, the example, the Philippines to the call centers in the Philippines, I actually think a decent amount about that, because I think that's one of the places where it's going to become very dire very quickly.
Right.
If they say something like 70 to 80% of the population maybe in these sort of like outsourced services, business services for foreign businesses in the Philippines, and all those services go away. So I think that's a great one to sort of like hook it into. And if you could say in 2.5 years, if employment in Philippines is below 50% below it where it is now, then you have some sort of trigger that kicks and you've learned something, right? So what I think is super interesting about this whole thing is, when I was coming into it, I was thinking this was like a betting thing where it was a bunch of smart people like doing it for their reputation. What you're saying is the whole thing is aimed at actually doing good, actually helping solve these problems, helping to sort of like extract this expertise from this field of experts.
Right. I mean, there's many platforms out there that are betting markets, like Manifold to Kalshi. I do like them for what they offer also. I think what Metaculus holds in the general landscape of epistemic security and rigor is a place where it is not actually making money, where, withholding alpha is rewarded. It is a space where you should demonstrate your accuracy, and we should do it with a level of rigor that is unmatched, which is why our track record also shows that Metaculus forecasts have been more accurate than other platforms through and through.
Yeah.
So if you ask me, but zooming back on the question of, existential risk and where AI safety comes into play.
Yeah.
My theory of existential risk is as such. Existential risk is failure to coordinate at the face of a growing risk. In order to coordinate, what we need is shared world models. What we need is shared understanding of how my projection of actions that we could take differ from your projections. And in that gap, seeing if our risk tolerances are aligned. If so, then maybe there is something shared that we can do. This requires us to lay out our incentives clearly. This requires us to lay out our knowledge explicitly on what is likely to happen. We live in a world with, corporate incentives, legal incentives, capitalist incentives, to the point that there are so many layers that are blocking this. What I am excited about is providing a level of epistemic clarity where we're actually talking about mapping the future. What is most likely to happen? Using these questions as shared building blocks, I believe actually gives us a capability to be able to predict what are likely disasters. For example, what is the likelihood of more than, 10% of Florida to be, needing evacuation if a Category 5 hurricane hits? This question, we could ask this question months before, years before this actually took place, and see, what is our readiness to react to this. I want to say one more thing.
Can I ask you this? Okay, go ahead. And then I want to ask you about who these people are. Like, who are these predictors? Are they academics? Are they, who are the top 5? They should be celebrities.
Right. I mean, in the forecasting sphere, there are celebrities, they are celebrities of this kind. There is many groups like Samot-Fiti, for example, that has expert forecasters that have time and time proven their track record. One of the reasons why I love Metaculus, honestly, is that it's a space where you can demonstrate competence on this front. And honestly, it doesn't take something that is extraordinary, but it's actually more about practice and focusing on the topic. Like we have seen many people that have started without much accuracy that have grown through in time. After forecasting, for 6 months, a year, after you have some demonstrable track record, what is interesting is like people with good track records actually get job offers through this, be it, hedge funds to government, to federal agencies, to defense sector.
Wow.
It is something that gives pretty rightful bragging rights for, you were able to forecast and it was accurate.
Yeah.
This is applicable in
What's the general background of a super predictor? Is this someone, who's got tons of degrees? Is this someone what does it
have
take?
All kinds of profiles, and that's one of the things that is interesting. Like I think these are all fairly anecdotal. I would love to actually do detailed research on this, but a lot of people who have worked in finance or have physics background have been pretty attracted to this for a certain kind of modeling the world with rigor is interesting to them. But instead of sitting and building a composite model, here the real threshold is only if you think your conclusion is accurate and it is sufficient level of rigor, then you should share it with the world. We have a lot of people who are just, doing their jobs in life as, doctors, as authors, as journalists, as, techies, building different platforms that then end up being really good at forecasting and saying, oh, maybe I should focus on this. So a lot of people I do work with actually have come from very different backgrounds and said, oh, I've heard of this website. And like 2 years later, I quit my job to be a forecaster because I think there's something here. And
wow,
that to me is really interesting. And there's a way to leverage that. Like, for example, we had a partnership with Bridgewater where we ran a tournament for identifying talent that is particularly good at forecasting from new graduates. And at the end of that partnership last year, we actually had the top winner of the tournament actually got a job offer from there and is working at Bridgewater now. And we will be repeating this again. So it is a space where you can actually demonstrate your level of rigor that will be quite valuable for.
And do the predictors, the super predictors, like they see a question and then they do a lot of study into that to figure out sort of like what is my prediction going to be for this? And then second question, do you need expertise in that area? Like, is everybody who's accurately predicting AI risk stuff in the field of AI risk, or is there, somebody who's a podiatrist who's just really good at predicting stuff and he's good at predicting AI stuff?
Yeah, not at all. You do not have to be a domain expert. In fact, there has been quite interesting research on this front. For example, in the book Super Forecasting, there's a couple descriptions of why are people who are really good forecasters end up doing better than intelligence officials in the government that have private information. But somehow, just with the public information, someone's able to forecast more effectively. How is that possible? I have a couple of theories on why this works. One, having access to information does not necessarily mean you are building a better model of the world. That is something that comes from training that forecasters get really good at over time. So by developing a practice of what are additional pieces of information, can I integrate that quickly into a shared world model? Like that is very powerful in itself. And there's many different disciplines that train you for that. If you are a specialist in internal medicine, you need to be able to see a new data point and say, this is how it links to the larger picture.
Sure.
And that is very easy to transfer to other domains. When you see a new question, obviously, you should do your research and some level of domain knowledge is good. But by no means the successful predictors will be experts in the domain. In fact, what we have found again and again is forecasting generalizes across domains. And the real winning configuration, in my opinion, is pair the domain expert with the pro forecaster, have them be next to each other. And that is when it actually moves really, really fast. And we've had collaborations that really underline that. For example, in a workshop with Estera that focused on investment strategies for synthetic biology applications. Questions like, if we had 50 million additional budget, which of these research avenues should we put the budget towards? We brought expert forecasters with the domain experts next to each other. And that back and forth feedback loop is how you can come up with very rigorous investment strategies or theses on which actions are likely to yield the consequences you're looking for.
Right. I mean, I would have to imagine you could take this whole machine and just point it at financial stuff and use it to make money. But I'm appreciative that you're doing something, much more important with it.
I mean, I look at it the other way. I think a lot of people are trying to make money on stock market anyway. Like that does happen. If you feel like there is something else to add to the world that, looks at what are catastrophic risks that we are facing, I think that is the kind of person that then gets attracted towards Metaculus.
Yes, certainly. So I want to talk all about the AI risk forecasts and that kind of thing, but I have a sort of threshold question for it, which is like, if you're predicting extinction, where like you literally are not there if your prediction is right, do you feel like that changes the mind of the predictor at all, or does that like muddy the purity of the prediction just because it's fundamentally different than any other? Like if I predict who wins the Super Bowl, the other team loses, I wake up on Monday and keep going. But if I accurately predict the end and I'm right, that's kind of a weird thing for a human to deal with. So is there any of that come into play, or you think these guys are just like purist scientific approach? There's no emotional component to it at all?
I mean, I think one ought to be able to model scenarios in which they do not exist. Like most of my plans for the world are in, 200, 500 year horizon. And that's fair. I would much rather have people show up that way. But it does take effort, and it takes a certain level of, privilege to be able to look at the world from that vantage point, and like good forecasters are ones that are not necessarily panicking about tomorrow immediately so that they can actually zoom back.
Yeah. All right. So what can we learn about AI risk from this prediction market? I'm sure there are lots of things you are tracking and people are talking about, but what are some interesting ones that, can just give us some insight?
Yeah, we have a number of forecasts that haven't been resolved yet that I think are quite interesting. And it's interesting not just for what they are right now, but also how they have evolved through time. Probably like the most famous question in Metaculus is, when will the first general AI system be devised, tested, and publicly announced? That is, in a way, I actually don't love this question because I think there's so much nuance to here. I could like reword this question in 10 different ways and 10 different
what is
answers.
Generalized is a squishy target. Means different things to everybody, but
it's still good that, this is the parent question that I would start with.
Yeah. Okay. And so what do they say?
The current median forecast is in 2032, and that is not a lot of time. Another question that I think is more specific that I like is, will there be human-machine intelligence parity before 2040? And the community is currently at 98% on this one. The level of confidence is very, very high. Like 98% to me means it's unlikely that I can't even conceive of seeing data that would change my mind about this. This seems like this is so obviously, in the trajectory.
Right. And do you see do news events move the market at all? Like last night, we're taping this on Friday, October 11th, and last night Elon brought out all the robots and the new taxi and the whole thing. And to me, I was looking at those robots walk out. I think it's called Optimus is the name of his robot.
Right.
And it's, having conversations with people and talking to them, and it's a bartender and all this stuff. And I'm like, whoo, that, we're moving fast. We're moving real fast. You can see that guy with ChatGPT 4 inside him and then ChatGPT 5 inside him. And you're like, that Optimus plus ChatGPT 5. So do you find that how often does the prediction market shake up?
Quite often. And for any question on Metaculus, actually, anyone can look at it and see what are the movers. I like the movers tag, especially because then you can see, what jumped very recently, what happened. And that is something that is quite powerful in my opinion. For example, I will give examples from the question, will there be human-machine intelligence parity? The community forecast was around 40% in April 2022. And by June 2022, it jumps to 60%. And then in March of 2023, it goes to 75%. And it basically skyrocketed, and it's just been sitting at 95 to 98% for about the entirety of last year.
It's almost like a expert opinion poll or something like that. Like it's got a real ability to sort of track history over time and look at the way the experts evolve. It's fascinating. All right, what else? What else are they predicting?
Some other questions that I think are interesting is on this front. For example, before 2030, will an AI complete the Turing test and the Kurzweil-Kapor long bet? And this is currently sitting at 80%. This also jumped from about 30 to 50% in 2022 to 80%. It's not that 98 the way the other question is, because it's a shorter horizon. But you can literally see like how the public sees the capability growth to yield the next steps. And you can also see who are the best track record forecasters and how does it compare. Let's focus a little more towards existential risk. Like one of the questions I like on this front that gives a lot of color is, if a global catastrophe was to occur, will it be due to an artificial intelligence failure? I'm curious if you have a forecast.
Just a global catastrophe. That's it?
Yes.
Okay.
If
I'm at 150%.
Occurs, will this be due to an artificial intelligence failure? I love the wording of this question because it actually creates a different frame around AI-driven X risk. Like we do have climate problems that are also rapidly escalating. How do these two come? And often I find people who are working in AI safety to frame resource allocation as a zero-sum game between different causes that are critical in the world. And I like to turn to forecasting to see, okay, like, is this actually accurate? The fact that this number is not 100% means that there's other causes that are worth paying attention to. So how should one allocate resources? The forecast on that, if a global catastrophe occurs, will it be due to an AI failure mode? The current community prediction is at 37%. This is not very high.
And that means that if we have a catastrophe, the cause of it will be something other than AI.
Yes.
I mean, I guess it gets a little squishy with like the word. Is an earthquake? Is a forest fire? Is a hurricane a catastrophe? Is a And then my other question is like, with these sort of like with the squishiness we talked about around artificial general intelligence, how do you blow the whistle on that question and be like, yes, here's the winner because at this moment it was achieved?
Right. This is why resolution criteria is super important. And the kind of person Metaculus attracts is the kind of person that will actually want to nitpick about this, because that specificity is where the accuracy comes from. Honestly, like that is the thing that really sets apart Metaculus community. We do not have another community that actually scrutinizes to that level. The way I interpret this question, I mean, when I look at the resolution criteria, the specificity is at least 10% of human population will be claimed by deployment of some artificial intelligence system. And it will be no if at least 10% of human population is lost due to a non-AI reason. And
okay,
like that, for example, to me actually points at, like the community actually is paying attention to other frames of risk that are also pretty threatening. Like we will have an outlandish number of climate refugees if we do not change our trajectory coming in from places like Bangladesh, which might experience mass floods that will be tens, if not hundreds of millions of people to be displaced. Like, now, will that actually yield the level of risk that will actually decimate the community? That's a different question. I have forecasts about that too. There's one more that I want to add on.
Please.
If an artificial intelligence catastrophe occurs, will it reduce the human population by 95% or more?
That is the question. Okay, right. I'm going to cover my eyes for this answer.
Right. This also sheds light to a different avenue of reactions towards AI-driven existential risk that I often find frustrating, where people are like concerned about extinction to the point where they feel like they run out of spoons to be concerned about anything else that is less than extinction. I think, yeah, go ahead.
No, please go ahead. This is a great question. I love talking. I think about this a lot.
I think there is a lot of problems that we're already experiencing that started from AI. None of these are posing right now an existential threat to humanity as is. But there are communities that are suffering from this financially. There will be large-scale job displacement. There, in fact, has already been a level of job displacement.
Yeah.
Now, there is a way to contemplate existential risk as a phenomenon in the future to the point that, we should be prepared for what is coming next as opposed to look at, hey, what is happening right now? And is what we're experiencing right now a meaningful enough short-term risk? There are a lot of communities that are being decimated for what holds them together, their identity together is getting lost. Now, these people aren't dying, but it's like death of a language, it's death of a community. It's lack of representation in the future paradigm that is, if you do not have a language model that is operating in your language, you do not have representation in that language.
Right. If your culture isn't in the training, your culture it doesn't exist.
Right. And I have friends, one of the things we love doing was, we should rigorously translate Wikipedia into other languages, use machine-assisted translation, just to make sure that these are in the training data for the next run. Like, none of this is existential risk for humanity at scale. But I think it is quite short-sighted to say, hence, that is not the most priority thing, and we should only focus on existential risk. Now, zooming back to the question, will it reduce human population by 95% or more? This forecast is currently at 68%. This is quite high, in my opinion. This is high to the point that the kind of failure mode that I envision here is one that is growing and scaling as it is causing the form of damage. This is much higher than the case of AI-related risk profile I used to have even a year ago, which is that there will be a lot of harms that get normalized in society, but human life lost will not be at a level that is a global alarm raise, but instead this will be seen as normalization of phenomenon that will be considered, unacceptable today. Such as, we had 200 million people losing their jobs, but that's normal. That's just how the world goes. That was the paradigm I have operated.
And is there a world where it's 200 million people died from it and that's okay too?
I mean, in a way, there's a lot of people dying right now due to climate's, risks, and we have normalized this to the point that we are not taking action. So I can envision this. The question is, what are the right steps that we can take? And this is when forecasting actually becomes really useful, in my opinion. Not just creating a shared world model, but what actions can we take? And these conditional questions will let you see if you do pull this lever, will the result of the question actually change substantially or not?
Right.
I do think the forecast on this being at 68% is quite high.
And is there a time frame on that? That's infinite time?
Well, the question will be closed in 2099, as in up until that point, we will be tracking if an artificial intelligence catastrophe occurs.
Okay. All right. Listen, I so hope we get to 2099 and have this market with these questions going on. That would be an incredible outcome.
Right.
So
these are just some of the relevant unresolved forecasts that we have.
How do you think the field of AI safety employs the forecasts to better the field? How do people take what you're making and then make it even more impactful?
I think a lot of strategy is downstream from forecasting, and Metaculus itself has played a critical role on this front by bringing front and center some of the hard questions, but also having them be discussed in a level of rigor that is not getting lost in, person A, gives a talk, person B gives a podcast, there's a write-up. No, here's a numeric thing that can continuously aggregate information. Then we have had many interesting reports published by many different fronts, like, for example, a lot of investment strategies or risk profiles, like for example, Agea's BioAnchors report, like a lot of different, especially philanthropic organizations, do build their work on top of forecasts. And it is much better if this is done explicitly, where you can say, this is a strategy we are taking, and it is built on top of the shared pillar of these forecasts that seemingly is agreed by a much wider community. And this is the community's track record. That to me is the kind of epistemic security where you can pick your strategy and make a claim of rigor with your strategy. This is fairly common. And also a lot of people who are fairly high profile, pushing forward, different ways in which we can mitigate existential risk due to AI are fairly active in the forecasting space as well.
Yeah. Do you think, if you took random 1,000 people off the street, you could find a super predictor in them? Are there people with super prediction abilities walking around that don't know they have it?
I believe so, yes. I was talking about this with my dad, actually, by, just seeing how he would operate. And this kind of forecasting capacity is one that does emerge in many people who are paying attention to the news, who are able to ask questions of skepticism to a level where they don't leave any stone unturned. They want to look at, what's under this, what's under that. And we live in a world where there's a lot of doubt in the content that we are, pushed through different media channels. We live in a world where there's a lot of misaligned incentives that are causing downstream effects. I do think a lot of people do pay attention to that and track that. If anything, Metaculus offers a space for you to actually exercise this to the point where you're like, here is a way in which this can be formalized into a track record. So that I do find interesting. And that's why I think working with, for example, like universities with respect to seeing how forecasting can help is really good. Especially on, even like dummy questions, you can actually see how some people tend to do much better because they ask the right questions and they're exercising judgment in a way where they're not holding back.
How about in combating misinformation and disinformation? Is there any use for this? That if you say, here is the sphere of what all of the expert predictors believe, and here's some crazy shit some people are saying that's totally outside of, what anyone who has reasonably forecasted this thing has said. Is there anything there?
Totally. Good question. One of the things we recently launched is actually on top of community notes on X/Twitter. What is interesting is someone makes a claim. Say, Kamala Harris says, if Trump is president, this will be terrible for abortion rights and women's rights. Okay, what does that mean? That there's an implicit forecast in there. What is likely to take place? Or someone makes a claim about, large-scale future event. This happens all the time. Being able to immediately turn that into okay, well, here's where the public's forecast is offering a level of epistemic security, again, in form of, it's not really misinformation, but it's more like an accurate way to reflect what the state of the world is and where the public's pulse is at any given point. It's not really a survey. I mean, ultimately, yes, it is asking a question to a wide number of people. But wisdom of the crowd operates slightly differently, in my opinion, because you can see who has good track record and where does it converge towards. And that seems to be more accurate to the point that it is third best forecast in, the 3,000 plus forecasters that we have competing in our tournaments. So that's
amazing. Is there anything any spectacularly outrageous forecasts that were made that were just deadly accurate, over your history that you point to as oh my God?
Let me think. I mean, some of the things that jump out to me is more so when I think of the word spectacular, where my mind goes is more people were able to leverage the forecasts in a way that was incredible. I mean, there's a lot of factors.
Yeah. They took the forecast and made real change with it. They did something important with the forecast.
A lot of cryptocurrency investment strategies, we have all these forecasts running on Metaculus, and someone said, we built a fund from it, and now we're one of the philanthropic donors it took a very wild ride on that, right? we have one anecdote that is pretty dear to me, which is around pro forecaster in Ukraine actually deciding to move as soon as the Russia-Ukraine forecast started from the east side. And these forecasts started a little before the war. And he said, yeah, I'm going to move to Lviv from the Russian border. And that was absolutely the right call. Like, anecdotal right calls are also very powerful. And if we're able to enable that, like, that is great. When I think about, more large-scale, like Metaculus successes, I mean, forecasting the COVID-19 pandemic was very, very important and powerful. And that was a space where we have done a lot of work. And like currently we're in collaboration with CDC on continuing forecast on, COVID and monkeypox. And these are all coming in from being able to help gather expert opinions to the point that someone can take this and turn this into action.
Wow. And so let's say you had someone who was a super predictor of something like politics, and you said, okay, you've predicted the last 20 elections perfectly. Tell me who's going to win the Super Bowl. Would they be able to, knowing nothing about football, just perform some sort of, publicly available data analysis that would make them a better predictor than someone who actually knows about football?
I mean, the question is, what does it mean to know about football at that point, right? Like, you obviously need data. You need to look at something. It's
right.
not, pulse check or gut feeling.
Right. You could just watch dudes run around all day with no data and not learn a lot. You could just look at the data, never see the game, and probably learn a lot.
Right. You mentioned elections, for example. Like an example of like good election forecasting would be in 2022, the U.S. midterm elections. Prediction markets actually fared worse than expert forecasters. And that was interesting, right? The election forecasts from like 538, who has a very famous election model, were more accurate than all prediction markets from Manifold, from Polymarket, election planning gods predicted. The only site that was surpassing 538's model was Metaculus. And this is interesting. We are not a prediction market. There's no betting here. Everyone's incentive here is to create a shared world model that is more accurate. And I do think that is powerful. That way, some of the pitfalls of prediction markets and incentives that coming from there. An expert forecaster is still very good. Like, I am absolutely in favor of more model-based forecasting. In fact, we have some projects on this front. But yeah, like the right way to do this is how can we aggregate this in a way where everyone is actually putting on more building blocks so that it is a solution of collective intelligence in the end.
Sure. Part of training AI models to generalize, right, is to learn about the world around them and learn like physics and, learn the whole world around them. If you took all of your data from Metaculus and trained a model on it, is that something anybody has done? And would that advance the generalization of the model, which I don't
Well, this is something many people are doing right now, and I want many more people to be doing this. So we recently went open source with our code base, by the way. I would love for anyone who's excited about this, who wants to help make this better, reach out, share what you would like to add on our GitHub repo. Our data is also available for people who are interested in this. They can reach out to us and get access. One of the ways in which what we can offer to the world as Metaculus would be very helpful for developing safe AI, in my opinion, is around questions of AI benchmarking and using forecasts as a benchmark. Forecasting is a very interesting benchmark because it cannot be gamed, really. You don't have the answers. You can't have a leakage of the data if you're actually willing to look forward. And this has been one of the problems that I have seen in the landscape. Like, a lot of people are training AI models from past Metaculus questions and then backtesting it and saying, this has gone well. For example, recently, Center for AI Safety released a paper and a couple of blog posts saying, forecasting bots are coming. I mean, a lot of people criticize them for the level of rigor because they were backtesting. And I see the role Metaculus should play in the landscape is actually like hold the level of standard of rigor where we do not have people just saying hype claims, but actually say, okay, if you think you're forecasting well, if you can build an AI that is forecasting really well, come compete at this tournament. So we're actually about to launch the Q4 tournament on forecasting AI benchmarks. And what this is you can build any bot connecting any different API, make it multi-agent, make it as complex as you wish. OpenAI and Anthropic both sponsored with ample credits, so we will offer credits to anyone that wants to compete. All you need is to join our Discord and message us, and we will give you a key for it. So it's a great place for, if you want to develop more competence in the space of how can I use prompting, how can I build more complex things rather than just one-shotting everything. You can build a bot, and your bot will forecast on many questions day by day. And this is the right way, in my opinion, to bring a level of rigor to claims like we are having superhuman AI. It is doing this, it is doing that. So I was pretty disappointed with the way the case paper panned out, to be honest. Like, I was like, if you're only backtesting it, meanwhile we have a tournament, come join the tournament. I don't think a single shot prompt is going to do it. We have hundreds of people that are trying single shot prompts right now in the tournament. And some people are building more novel things, where they have multi-agent systems that are discussing with each other, that are checking each other's reasoning. Yeah. I do believe AI forecasting will get better, but what I would love is many more people to actually try this, try different strategies. There's a lot of really interesting papers that came out from, Steinhardt Lab, Danny Halawi. I would love for more people to try these to see where we are at. And what Metaculus can offer to the AI landscape is a benchmark that cannot be gamed, that is continuously evolving and demonstrating what is the level of competence of AI right now.
Amazing. What is your personal forecast for that AI forecaster outperforming the human forecaster? I mean, certainly it's only a matter of time, right? It's not a if, it's a when.
I think it is an if we do not actually change the architectures underlying the models. I want to see, let me put it this way.
So you don't think LLMs will beat a human super forecaster? That's the LLM. We will need something other than LLMs to beat a human super forecaster?
I believe that there is a certain form of judgment that requires more novel architectures. And there are people working on this. There are many different initiatives like Safeguard AI, for example, that are doing a combination of model-based reasoning with, state space free models like LLMs, transformers. It's a very different lineage where the model is inspectable and it can evolve. Some mechanistic interpretability work is actually bringing these two together, which I also think is fairly interesting.
Love it.
I believe the models that will ultimately be able to be really competent forecasters will not come from completely model-free systems. And that is why I think there is a lineage shift that needs to happen. But there's a different concern that I have that is actually an even bigger concern, which is how far will scaling laws bring us? In the end of the day, what we will not get from just hyperscaling is actually the question of judgment. Just the question of, are we going to be able to collect quality enough data that is actually staying in good judgment territory rather than, being dwarfed by how much absolutely garbage logic that already is out there. Implicit judgment is something a model can do, yes. But what we need to create for a quality forecaster that is actually competitive is actually to have something that is trained on really good judgment, that can actually have a level of discernment of, many different features, should I entertain more data? If I see a certain data trend, am I able to come up with a judgment on, is this the right thing? What's the epistemic rigor of this? All the way to, what are the right base rates identification? There's a bunch of groups that are working on this question, like Future Search, for example, that I am excited to see how their work evolves through time. Again, it's the forecasting AI benchmark tournament that is the place to test these out. We will have more and more demand towards domain-specific judgment, but we do not have a ton of data for quality domain-specific judgment. So no, I don't think a larger model will automatically bring us good judgment. In fact, it is going to parrot already existing failure modes in human judgment as is right now, because that's what it's learning.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let me put it this way, a slightly different angle maybe. we're talking about, a new AI model was able to pass this test. Like passing a test is a terrible benchmark. Like that actually says more about like the bar exam being maybe not the best thing. And also the best lawyers aren't the ones that necessarily are scoring top, but have something more on top of that is able to understand the context in which you are doing.
Yeah.
So
I mean, it seems ridiculous to me to have these companies that are doing this extremely dangerous work to be the ones who are like setting their own red line, defining it, and then telling us whether they've passed it. You know, like I think it should be third party, what's the red line? Third party, did they pass the red line?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, years ago in 2015 actually, when I was writing my thesis, I started my thesis, which was in how can we use AI towards better collective intelligence. I started with a quote from Jaron Lanier that I really liked, which says, the Turing test cuts both ways. If you have lowered your own standards of intelligence to such a degree that a machine seems smart, like how far have you let your sense of personhood degrade in order to make the illusion work for you? I find this a very powerful quote, and it is incredibly important. It is the definition of intelligence being able to pass the bar exam. I don't think that's the high bar. That's not the standard that I want to hold us. Being a good lawyer requires so much more than that. And I think instead of, hurraying for metrics that are not the level of rigor that I would like to hold the society towards, like this is the thing we have been doing already, right? Like intellect and ability trying to be measured by like a standardized college admission score. Like how influential is your research being measured by number of research citations you have? Like how many likes did you get for your new picture on Instagram being a proxy for attraction and interest? Like I'm not interested in propagating this further, especially if you're trying to decide if an AI system is being helpful or not.
Yeah. And so the better way is?
To me, the better way is actually we need to identify what good judgment looks like if you're looking at the context of forecasting, for example, or strategy planning. It's following is so. I mean, let's get even more specific, right? Recently, the O1 preview was launched, and we had an initial assessment of how does O1 preview compare with GPT-4. And one of the, we were very lucky because we have been running this AI benchmarking tournament, right? So we can try some of the main categories of failure modes that AI systems have had on this front. For example, in forecasting, there's a couple simple things you can look at. For example, is there logical consistency? Is there scope sensitivity? Is there negation sensitivity? Scope sensitivity, basically, if you have a continuous forecast, say, you're trying to get forecasts for different ranges, the total of your forecast should add up to 100, right? If I ask you, what is the likelihood of, number of monkeypox cases to be less than 500? And then I ask you, what is it for it to be more than 500? Those two answers should add up to 100%.
Right. Yep.
That is not what you're getting from AI systems right now. Why? Maybe there is not good training data. Why? Maybe we are not actually seeing people that are able to ask questions on a continuous level and then discretize this. We were testing out, how does O1 preview compare on forecasting for self-consistency? And we found that it is actually pretty similarly scope insensitive. Like it's not actually paying attention to the core part of what are different thresholds on this front. Like these are some of the examples where why is this happening? Because one, the prompting wasn't great. Two, maybe there isn't a lot of good data on this front. So we need more demonstration of good human judgment, good human strategy, and have that create the data set. Because ultimately, like forecasting is the irrefutable proof that, one can say, yes, I am able to leverage my world model to the point that I was able to see what action I should take and what consequences it yields. And I went ahead with that.
So interesting.
So
let's look to 2025. It's October. It's just around the corner. Tell me, as it relates to AI, generally, what are some of the, 2 or 3, 4 biggest things that are predicted to come in 25?
One prediction that is, fairly common is that's high profile on our side is when will OpenAI announce GPT-5? The community prediction right now is on February of 2025. So that is
interesting.
Something that is
Okay.
On
that's a big one.
Like fairly short time horizon with respect to seeing what comes next. So that's the first thing that comes to my mind from off the top of my head.
Is there a warning shot forecast market? I guess you'd have to define sort of what the criteria of the warning shot was, but say it was an event where AI killed 1 million or more people.
Mm-hmm. Maybe you're trying to define like a conditional question, like if or can you come again? I want to understand what you mean.
Yeah, it would be like what is the forecast? At what date do you predict we will have AI kill its first 1 million humans?
Let me see.
It's a horrible.
I literally just Googled searched for what you said on Metaculus, and questions that come up are: before 2100, will AI cause the human population to fall below 5,000 individuals? The forecast to this is at 3%.
Okay.
It's quite unlikely that it is a level of catastrophe that is causing extinction.
Right.
Another question is, it's not always, great. If before 2050, AI kills more than 1 million people, will the policy response be insufficient?
That's the worst question I've ever heard. It's like, oh God.
1 million is the range where, yes, like this is an insane disaster. And it is not that, a specific nation even is threatened by it. The forecast is at 65% for this one. And it is one of the questions that people have here or approaches is, how can AI kill 1 million people without also killing the rest of them? Maybe this is a narrow deployment, not broadly superhuman system.
Great question,
that is causing a specific mode of failure for defense system or a climate related thing. Another question. This is a very short time horizon. Before 2032, will we see an event precipitated by AI malfunction that causes at least 100 deaths or at least $1 billion USD in economic damage? The forecast to this is at 75% right now.
Okay. I was going to say 100.
I mean, I don't think we're in it just yet, but I think this can easily happen. 100 is a fairly...
I like that. Yeah. Let me ask you this. Do you have and this is a question that some people hate, some people like, but do you have a personal Pedum?
I mean, I find I'm usually annoyed at that question because what is if you just
right? It's too loose for it's a very broad, undefined.
It's more like I don't want to talk about Pedum as much because there is a lot of smaller scale disasters that is enough for me to actually pay attention to. I do not think humanity will go extinct as a result of AI. I do think a lot of people a lot of cultures, a lot of communities will vanish to the point that if more than half human population is threatened, I would be concerned. And I do think that is already happening right now. And the shape of my concern with respect to my Pedum is that it is not just that, this is already the case where we are going to have these climate refugees. It already started in many places. I mean, look what we went through just days ago with Hurricane Milton in Florida, just the second biggest hurricane that is hitting back to back, literally in a few days window. Question of Pedum actually normalizes this. It actually makes us look away from what is the shape of the disaster that is happening already right now? And is that actually mitigated or exacerbated by the AI and the tooling that is taking place right now? If training bigger models has an environmental cost to the point that, this is actually causing further climate risk, maybe one would say that, yes, AI caused this. Maybe one would say that, the focus towards AI actually normalized a lot of other people's other forms of suffering. Again, I want to go back to what I said. I think existential risk is failure to coordinate at the face of growing risks. And
I totally agree with that. Yeah.
we are living in that paradigm right now. And questions that only make us focus on existential risk are actually causing us to exactly stop coordinating and paying attention to the risk profiles we are actually suffering through. For example, like one of,
So
yeah.
I was going to, so
Go ahead.
I was going to, would you, are you saying that someone who is concerned, because I have these thoughts, someone who is concerned about existential risk should never talk about existential risk and actually deal with their concerns about existential risk by addressing smaller things, job loss, deepfakes, whatever. Like, don't go for the big thing, go for the small things and knock those out.
I mean, I will try to push that viewpoint even further. You can't go for the big thing. What does it mean to go for the big thing?
Well, go for the big thing. I mean, I guess it's what I'm trying to do on this show, which is like, hello, citizens of the earth. 2,000 people are making a machine that the experts of the earth say its default setting is to kill you and your family soon.
Right. Okay. From that perspective, yes, I think from creating awareness, for sure, I think you are doing the right thing. But also one way in which you are doing this, that is literally in this conversation, is to point at, okay, what are ways in which this is likely to take place? Like, for example, like the avenue that I would be worried about the most in like these days with respect to how I see technical development is with respect to biohazards and context of AI. It will not be AI, it will be the pathogen at that point that actually ends up causing large-scale risk that was developed.
Does your model depend on it never being smarter than a human? Like, do you forecast that humans can maintain control of a superhuman intelligence?
I am more worried about incentive alignment. I am much more worried about even a less than superhuman model can be used to cause existential threat to humanity. So, like, the scale of concern that you are describing is not the scale. Like, I am already alarmed before that. I am more worried about state actors, malicious actors that already have a lot of ways in which there could be large-scale harm, where actions cannot be controlled. Like, nuclear fallout from nuclear reactors.
Yeah.
Like, this is not with malicious intent, yet it has caused massive scale damage.
Oh, man.
So
given
this,
go ahead, please.
Well, I don't need to go to the level of like, will there be superhuman AI intelligence? I think there will be superhuman AI intelligence. I think we will get there. But like, in a way, AI already can search things much better than I do. AI already was able to search things much better than I could, way before LLMs were even developed. Like, there's different specializations of domain knowledge, and at the hands of like the right combination of people, that is when this comes alive or ends up killing us. So
let's talk about timelines. Like, for timelines, because I am guilty of exactly what you were saying. I am the mayor of the town you are saying describing as having a lot of flaws. Where it's like, let's just talk about the existential risk. But I hear what you're saying. I hope you're right, I guess. Like to me, it's sort of like, I blow right past the humans doing bad stuff, because I figure like we've been all human here doing bad stuff to each other for a long time. And with tools that have greater deadliness, it'll be more deadly, but we're still just people messing with people. And the real thing is this alien messing with people, that like the people messing with people will be within some limitations. When the alien shows up, that's when we're super dead.
The alien is learning from the ways in which people are messing with people. That's why we need to be able to get the alien to have good judgment. Much better judgment than human judgment. Like, if we are able to build an AI system that is actually thoroughly aligned with collective human values right now, that is still posing an existential risk. Like, I don't think as humans we have reached the level of, flourishing and coexisting to the point. So one frame that I'd like to introduce, for example. So before Metaculus, I was running AI Objectives Institute. I'm still quite involved, and I'm the president of the nonprofit. One of the references that we would have there is, how ambitious are you with respect to how you are imagining AGI? What is it able to actually accomplish in the scenario where this is not actually causing doom? This is a good pulse check because it actually lets people realize, like, what are the failure modes they're envisioning and what is the level of capacity that they're envisioning. For example, we would use this as a common reference because if the question is ultimately coordination mechanisms and we are able to use AI towards coordination mechanisms, will AI be able to turn Jerusalem into a peaceful city? If so, that means we will have accomplished something, right? If so, that means we are actually able to come up with things that go beyond the zero-sum games that we're currently operating in right now. And this is a point of a lot of suffering for many people. Are we able to actually develop something that is actually competent to the point that it is geared towards human flourish? Like, let's ask that question as much as we're talking about the risk profile. Right?
I love that question. I think that's great. I'll have one follow-up to that, though, which is like we would get like the human flourishing AGI, and it's going to be like, I'm so aligned with you humans. Here are 3 steps you need to take to reach utopia. Take this list and do it. And the humans get the list, and they're like, we don't like number 1. We changed number 2, half of it, and we're not even going to do 3 at all. And it's like, doom. Because I gave you 3 steps and you followed 0.5 of the 3 steps.
Right. I know we already do this quite often, right? With respect to like following, food safety regulations or,
oh my God, sure. Your doctor tells you don't eat this. You're like
disaster response. Like, this is what I mean as like, are we actually able to devise systems? I say systems because I don't think this is like an LLM. I think this is a thing that has humans in the loop. This involves governments. This involves, international organizations as much as it involves families. Like, are we able to actually build systems that has the level of coordination capacity where the AI, quote unquote, that is prescribing you, these are the 3 steps, will also say, the failure mode I envision you to take is that you will omit half of step 2 because I am able to forecast this given your incentives. Like,
of course,
this is what you're likely to do. And you should not do that.
I didn't even think you'd do step 2.
Very explicit. That's what forecasting is about. Like, if AGI genuinely gave me a suggestion and I followed it poorly, that's a really bad bar for an AGI.
Yeah. All right. Taylor, this is a fascinating conversation. I always like to end it on something optimistic. So what do you have in your forecast that will give the people some hope as we face the year 2025?
Big question, man, to just end it like that.
Or something you feel personally, do you have? You are honestly, for people that come on this show, you're a pretty optimistic guy, and you've got a pretty rosy picture of it. So I like it. You've got hope baked in, but anything out there that you're like, you know what?
I would say without optimism, there's very little we can do. I do want to stress there is utility to optimism. There is utility to being able to be the kind of aligned entity that you would like AI and everyone else to be in the world. Like, as fluffy as that sounds, I actually think there's a lot of truth to this. And I recommend people to come up with, what are things that they can do that will help them develop better judgment, that can help them propagate better judgment. I can name a couple of things I'm excited about. That is, in the at least the short-term horizon, like the immediate window.
Sure.
One of the things that we have been working about lately is working on developing forecasting communities. After we open sourced Metaculus, one of the things that was very important for me is to come up with ways in which people are able to zoom in on specific questions or subdomains that they are experts in, that they want to ask their followers. And so far, we have written most of the questions on Metaculus. We take suggestions, but ultimately that burden is on us to hold that level of rigor. I would love to share that with the wider world. So I want to invite people to define, what are domains that they are interested in, and come up with communities where they can ask questions to the people, collect data.
Cool.
And hopefully that will actually give them better grounding with respect to what kinds of futures they envision themselves to be going towards. Like, I'd love for you to.
Do you think anybody can go just get on the site and
Right, and
use
build a
it
community that is forecasting. Like, I'd love for you, for example, if you have questions that you want to ask your followers on,
that's cool.
what are takes towards existential hope, for example, which is the
Right.
question you asked me.
Sure.
I believe the future towards existential hope really comes from coordination mechanisms. Everything is dual use. Literally any innovation is dual use throughout human history. As long as you have agents that have their own perspectives, everything can be framed as dual use. What I am interested in is, given that paradigm, I want to bring tools of epistemic security and clarity to the world. I think this is necessary. And one way in which we can do this is let more people ask questions that they would like. So, if you have questions you want to run, I would love to spin up a community for you. I would love more people to pay attention to this. I want this to start more incremental building blocks so that we can have more shared understanding of what is likely to happen next. Because building that is actually what moves the world. Like, I'll give an example. With respect to gay marriage in the United States. What happened that, the public perception went from giving round numbers, like from around 20% towards around 70% in a generation of in a window of
same
20
thing, cannabis in the States.
Right. If you ask people, what happened that made you change your mind? Most people will not be able to give an answer to say, this specific conversation was the thing that tilted me. If they can, that's great. I don't actually expect this from people. The Overton window shifts, and that shifts because we ask the right questions, because the right questions keep on getting asked again and again. I believe there's a lot more to be done with respect to AI, not just for safe AI, but for the humanity that is flourishing because we have developed AI. That is what I'm interested in here. Would I stop AI development? I would say so. We don't need this to be able to go to a better future right now until we figure out a bunch of other parts. But I would like that to be competent AI that actually gets us to a better place. So I have questions I want to ask people. I'm lucky because I can ask them on Metaculus, but I want more people to be able to actually bring this out. So
amazing. Well, I hope all of our viewers and listeners go to the website and get involved. It sounds really, really interesting, and you're doing a great thing out there for the world. So I really appreciate it, and I'm so glad you came on.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Hey, he said no AGI until 2032. That is the best bet right now. Honestly, that sounds pretty decent to me. I think I would take that. That's a little bit of time. But I hope it takes that amount of time or a whole lot longer. Okay, so it is 2024. We don't know how long we have to live, so we live every day like it could be our last, and we end every show with something we call a celebration of life, just something that makes us thrilled to be alive. This week, two incredible talents together. The amazing Leon Bridges and Maggie Rogers singing Leon's epic, The River, together. Please enjoy.
My lips are on repeat, and my darkness I remember Mama's words reoccur to me. Surrender to the good Lord, and He'll wipe your slate clean. Take me to your river, I wanna go. Take me to your river, I wanna know.
Dip me in your smooth waters as I go in. As a woman with many crimes, I come up for it, and my sins walk down the Jordan. I want you to come, give you every part of me, but there's blood on my hands, and my lips are unclean. Take me to your river, I wanna go. Take me to your river, I wanna know. To your river, I wanna go. Please let me know. Take me to your river, I wanna go. Thank you so much, Dallas. We'll see you soon.
Hey, not much better than that, huh? Okay, my friends, please remember AI risk is not someone else's problem. It is yours and it is mine. Quoting Margaret Mead, never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, we are the only thing that ever has. For humanity, I'm John Sherman. I'll see you right back here next week.